On this episode of ResiWeek, the federal government is banning AV products, or at least a handful of incandescent lights. The importance of having natural disaster detection in your smart home, and taking a look at power and acoustics. All that and more next on ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 392, recorded Tuesday, August 8th, 2023. Banned AV. This is ResiWeek, your weekly look at the residential side of the AV industry. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. I'm thoroughly confused because last week somebody else took over for me for AV Week, and now I'm sitting in the chair for Mr. Matt D. Scott. So I'm your host. With us to discuss the news and information for the residential market, first and foremost, Ian Bryant from Premier SAV. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And Mr. Mark Corbin, of course, from our buddy over at Vanco. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me, Tim. Always appreciate it.
Absolutely. And if you're not watching the video, Ian has the epic beard. I have the epic hair. And Mark looks like a clean-cut, just Midwestern guy. So, I don't know what's wrong with you. You should grow your leg hair out. That's
I didn't get the memo.
All right. From my buddy Jeremy Glowacki from over at ResTech Today. Actually, Jeremy didn't write this, but he runs ResTech Today. From Jay Basin, talking about natural disaster detection sensors in a smart home. Not just fire detection, because that's simple, right? You got smoke detectors, which we've all had forever and a day, but you've also got a bunch of other different detectors, including CO2 emissions, air quality monitors, water for flooding, weather monitoring systems, all sorts of things. The article goes on to talk about what integrators, residential integrators can do to put some of these smart sensors in the home to not just alert the homeowners, but also to prevent some sort of disaster happening. Ian, I'm going to start with you on this. When you're reading this article and you're saying, okay, we can do earthquake detection, right? Obviously, depending on the region of the United States that we're talking about, obviously that's more important than other regions. But when you're talking to clients and you're talking to other integrators about what they're doing, what sort of implementation can they put into a home to safeguard against some of these extreme weather events that we keep happening?
Well, I first got to give props to Jay, by the way, for posting GitHub links for some modules that he's written for integrating these. I thought that was, I know he's, tipping his hat a little bit, but that was pretty cool that he's getting people access to those. But yeah, this is really a perfect example of what integrators can do to really take power of the integrated system in a home and start automating things to happen. When you start, when he talks about the fire detection and then we're not talking about internal fires, but external fires, and being able to automate the blinds to pull up. So if it gets extremely hot, that they don't start to possibly catch fire, or to start sprinkler systems turning on. These are things that can be quite easily integrated and automated into a home system with just a little bit of work. And we've been talking about air quality integration and how that can make a big difference when you start putting in the sensors to pick up on chemicals or all types of different particulates and start activating fans and ventilation and cleaning the air in the house. But when you start really thinking about outside the house and how you can prevent the natural disasters from affecting the home, it really becomes a whole nother ballgame. I really love this discussion to see what we can do. But I would also like to say that one of the things that we really also should start looking at, and I hope that the architectural and design community is how to build some of these homes to be able to withstand these better. So you have fireproof materials that the house is being built with, or if you're in a floodplain or a possible floodplain, to build your house up a story and use the base level as a parking area. And have all your utilities up one so they don't get damaged by floods. There's lots of things that can be done to also help prevent that based on how you design and build the house as well. So those two things put together could make a huge impact in what kind of devastation and what kind of loss we're looking at in some of these communities and the areas where there's going to be continued natural disasters.
Yeah, I have a dear friend who has he lives in Louisville, Kentucky, right on the river, and just like Ian just said, his technically his first floor is nothing but the garage, and it's all concrete, and then the living space starts on the second floor, right? So absolutely, that's something you can do there. Mark, same kind of question. As you're working with dealers who are working with homeowners, what are some of the safeguards that folks can put into place to help the homeowners, stem the effects of some of these natural disasters?
Sure. I mean, Ian brought up a great point. I live in the Midwest. Our company's based out of the Midwest, so basements are a huge deal in the Midwest. Very prone to leaking, right? Very prone to weather situations. So this is even a bigger deal for the Midwest area. As a matter of fact, if you look at local, even hardware stores are doing a lot of leak protection on any kind of device that's getting put out, whether it be a water heater, whether it even be a refrigerator, right? There's all kind of leak detection. So I think to be able to predict the weather, incoming and changes are extremely important, especially for basements with people who have sump pump backups and multiple devices even in there. I mean, think about your electronics that you house within basements. So it's really important for the Midwest to be able to tackle these type of issues. I mean, even from a wind standpoint, the Midwest, as you guys know, is extremely windy, and outdoor equipment can get damaged extremely easy. So even to Ian's point of learning as an integrator and a builder to deal with those situations as you expand your market, I think it's extremely important. And the fact that it's getting so much more accessible now to the end user and to the integrator, it's phenomenal. And it sounds like a world sometimes I feel like, oh, we're so privileged to have these things, but at the same time, we're spending a lot more money on our homes and on our luxury items than has been done ever in the past. So it makes a ton of sense. We want to protect our equipment. We want to protect our homes. And as you know, I mean, anytime you can relieve yourself from major insurance claims or insurance issues, it's huge. I mean, I would assume also in the long term, does this help insurance rates and so forth? It's all going to be really interesting as this grows into a large market and category.
I was just going to add also, this also is a lot easier than it used to be, coming from someone that used to do Crestron and AMX programming through the early 2000s and the mid 2000s. We had to do a lot of really customized coding, and it was very difficult and cumbersome. But with things like Matter and other IP-based communication protocols, it's really becoming easier to integrate these things and have actions happen for the customer to help protect it. It's not as hard as it used to be, so it's not something to be afraid of. Start digging into it a little bit, and you can really make an impact on your customer's life.
Yeah, and I like the biggest one that always comes to me, and probably because it serves every single part of the nation, not like Midwest or South has, Southeast is going to have obviously hurricanes, but right, like lightning alone, if you can prevent, I mean, we all know, power, we can always save with MOVs and we can help the power distribution when there's something like that. But at the same time, if you're alerted way before, shutting your system down makes a big difference. So all of those things, if you really think about it, start to come into play. And then how long is it before they all start to interact with each other, right? So,
well, that weather flow station actually said that they are doing a cloud-based pooling of data in your area, which I thought was really interesting to read. So before you get a sense from your weather station that there may be lightning in the area, you may have another weather station from another user 10 to 20 miles away. And that gives you exactly what Mark was saying. That'll give you that notification. All right, we're going to go ahead and shut the system down and protect everything. We know there's lightning coming nearby. I thought that was really cool.
And imagine if all your power management companies somehow started integrating that kind of equipment within. I mean, it can be really fascinating if you think about it.
Yeah. Well, and you both mentioned lightning. I want to make up a story. a friend of all three of ours, Joe Whitaker, here in St. Louis. Joe took over a project that is near and dear to my heart. I tell people I live in St. Louis. I actually live on the Illinois side. And here in my hometown of Alton, Illinois, there's a place called the Olin Mansion. and it's an old historic mansion that Joe took over the job because the other integrator couldn't, they weren't doing a very good job. I'll just put it that way. And the issue was they had a lightning strike, and the lightning struck the security system. And the way the electricity works, and this is an old saying from Kevin Iselli, Ian, is that electricity just works, right? It's going to find a way. And that lightning strike fried the entire AV system, entire control system. And that's something that is, I'm not going to say it's relatively easy to do, but it is a low-tech way to protect your gear, right? You can put in, electrical poles, but power poles in the ground to capture that electricity and basically attract the lightning well before it ever gets into your system.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, absolutely. It's damaging, and to your point, once a lightning comes in, it's got to get a way out. So you never know where that is going to travel. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, next story comes to us from CE Pro. Holy crap! The government wants to take everything from you. Not really. The federal ban on incandescent light bulbs. The Department of Energy on the minimum allowable lighting efficiency goes into effect. Here's the over-under on this, kids, and I am going to try to be as non-political as possible on this story because it is the government, and currently here in the States, it is a Democratic White House. However, quote unquote, the current rule serves as the culmination of a bipartisan effort to phase out inefficient light bulbs that started back in 2007 under the Bush administration. So this is something that the feds have been working on for quite a while. There are several memes that says, the current administration, President Biden, wants to take everything from your stove to your refrigerator to your light bulb. Mark, we'll start with you on this. Incandescent bulbs have been phasing out since the 2000s. Compact fluorescent light bulbs are kind of the go-to now. LEDs have also come into play here. When you look at things that the federal government can do in the sphere of a homeowner and what they can and cannot put in, what are integrators able to do to help them navigate some of these new rules and still make sure that they have an experience that they want to have in their home? Sure.
It's crazy to me that they're capable of actually banning a bulb that is pretty somewhat still efficient in certain circumstances. I would think from a home standpoint, I understand that we are going to be saving a ton of energy using LED bulbs. But at the same time, I think I find it really interesting because certain types of textures and lightings that you want to produce, whether it be in filming, whether it be in interviewing, I find it interesting that, all of a sudden we can't utilize different type of Kelvinages in an incandescent bulb. So being a manufacturer of some small bulbs, we have a little bit of bulbs we do ourselves. I find it really interesting. I think for the integrators, luckily there's so many tools at their hands now within LED. My biggest problem I find is compatibility. So with LEDs, a lot of your LED bulbs are also not completely compatible with the fixtures. And that is a really common problem within any integrator's system, within any integrator's job, is there's multiple times you buy bulbs that are just not compatible with the fixture that you're using. That is really important to make sure you look at. A lot of, they make this push for incandescent, but yet you forget that your bulb fixture manufacturers, some don't have a reliable LED ballast in there. So that's another whole situation that while you're banning the bulbs, we have to look at all the fixtures that are still out there that also probably are not compatible. So you might be driving savings on energy costs, but are we driving savings more for expense because we're having to convert so much? So it could be a long-term plan, but I would say to any integrator out there dealing with this situation, you got to check compatibility issues. I had the same problem at my own house, and it was pretty frustrating. The one thing from the incandescent standpoint of manufacturing, It is a lot cleaner to manufacture LEDs, but I will tell you it is not always as inexpensive. So
Okay.
that is just it's true. I mean, sometimes LED costs can get extremely high over time too, just because of the demand of LED right now as well. So,
Ian, according to the article, the move hopes to save homeowners $3 billion in energy costs and eliminate 222 million metric tons of carbon. Now, that's on one side. I'll ask you the first part of the question, the same thing I asked Mark, but I've got a follow up to that as well, and that goes into the waste and the trash that's going to be accumulated here. So how do we help homeowners navigate these waters but still get the experience they want at home?
It's going to be tricky. So I was thinking when I thought about this kind of perspective, my first thought from an integrator side was that there is a big opportunity here for integrators, especially those that are working with integrated and distributed lighting systems. Yeah. And my thought initially, and you're right, there is going to be some waste generated. We're going to have a lot of for instance, old dimming modules or dimmers that were part of distributed lighting systems that are not going to be compatible with LEDs when they go to switch them out, which are going to have to be removed and replaced. So there will be some waste there, but there is a great opportunity for an integrator. My recommendation is to get out in front of it. When I saw this article, the first thought I was thinking of as an integrator myself is for us to start sending out a newsletter blast about this discussion to our customers that have older, outdated systems, that this is coming. And when they go to start thinking about replacing certain light fixtures or grouping of light fixtures in their house, that we may need to consult with them to make sure that they're going to be able to be LED compatible with the system that they have installed. Yeah. So it's a great opportunity for integrators to look good as someone that's taking care of your customer. Business opportunities. You may get that pushback. Unfortunately, hey, I just put the system in 5-10 years ago, and now I've got to replace this stuff because I'm putting in LEDs. On top of that, the other business perspective I was thinking is if you're an integrator that's doing lighting systems or you're thinking about doing them, this is a great opportunity to partner with some of the manufacturers that are focused in the CI channel that provide high quality LED fixtures, because that's one thing that we all know, anyone that's done lighting in this industry, is there is a giant portion of the manufacturers out there that are doing very bad quality. And it's a lot of that, direct to the contractor construction grade stuff where they're not dimmable or they have a lot of issues. So there's a little bit of education that's going to happen to the integrators to make sure that they're up to date on some of the LED technologies, some of the good manufacturers, and what not to spec in the systems. So I looked at it as it's a bummer. I love the color of some of the incandescents. I like what Mark said. There are some, definitely, when you look at it from a design perspective, there are definitely some areas in the home where you want that warm, cool look that is very, very tunable as far as percentage and levels. We can get it really, really low. That sometimes you can't get that with LEDs, except with really high dollar ones. But at the same time, I look at it as moving forward and a lot of business opportunities for the channel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's going to just keep expanding, obviously. The only question I always have is, like, with all this remaining business, you got to think of, like, small or larger residential settings, even with, certain theatrical lighting and all that. I mean, you've got a lot of old setups that are now going to have to change a lot of different stuff. So to your point, I think it could grow a ton of new business for integrators, but could also cause some frustration for the end user for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, and that actually brings up the kind of the waste conversation is, yes, we can upgrade. And I'm reminded of another government-driven upgrade system that we had to do on the commercial side and the pro audio side, and that's the wireless spectrum. Right?
Right.
You had a number of wireless manufacturers, right? Whether it was AT or Sennheiser or Shure, offering rebates. Not basically. That's what they were offering. It wasn't basically. They were offering money back to, in essence, selling back your old systems that would no longer work, which would in essence be illegal, to purchase new channels. They were on the current spectrum, Is there anything that either of you have seen in any of the lighting systems, lighting companies coming down the pipeline that says, hey, if you're upgrading from incandescent to LED, here's a rebate, or here's a way to help out your customers, or they haven't gotten there yet?
Well, that's, it's really interesting, because I was thinking like house of worship. I was thinking about your stages. I think about your smaller venues. We do a lot with that. And I haven't seen a thing. So that was like one of my bigger concerns, was like, even we do a lot, within stage and musicians. So to me, I'm looking at, okay, what about all these older stages? And that you got to realize, like, a lot of entertainment and music was done in incandescent lighting, and a lot of it's set up that way. So to your point, I would hope that as the government bans this, they give the opportunities to house and worship and commercials that are willing to be greener or be cleaner and step up to that kind of system. But the costs are going to be high. I mean,
So I haven't seen anything come through from the Resi side yet, but I did want to point out one thing. It is very much, for those that haven't read the article, there is very much a government feel here. They're not actually banning the bulb. They're banning the efficiency rating that an incandescent bulb is unable to meet. So anything under 45 watts per lumen is being banned. And most incandescents are 15 watts. What I thought was also interesting was at the very end, there was talk of possibly increasing that to 120 watts per lumen, which would take a lot of the LEDs out of the bulb game as well, which would force manufacturers to be even more efficient in like very quick time.
So you're saying there's an opportunity here, Ian, is what you're saying, is if a bunch of you smart people, because I'm not this smart, bunch of smart people can get together and figure out a way to get 120 lumens out of
120 watts per 1 lumen.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'll call you.
And you could
figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what you said. So.
It's a very backwards way of banning something without banning it.
Well, it is, right? And I referenced back the wireless spectrum. That was a straight up, they sold the stuff off, right? There was no, but this is a way, this is reminiscent of the fuel efficiency from a number of years ago, right? Yep. Where cars had to be so much fuel efficient. And so, and this is probably more information anybody needed, but this is why the rise of SUVs came to be, because SUVs are actually technically a car built on top of a truck chassis. So a SUV is really a truck, and the efficiency of a truck is actually, according to federal standards, is much lower than the efficiency of a car. Now you have SUVs. That is, and now you guys know that. All right. Last story here, and we'll crank through this one really quickly. But it comes from residential systems, and taking a look at he's a bit of a mad scientist, Norm Varney. He's from AV Room Service, and he's involved in a system where he is really getting into the acoustics, as well as the power conditioning of the system. And Ian, I want to start with you on this. Those are two areas that are not inherently sexy, right? When you look at any sort of AV system, but also inherently important. How do you talk to and how do you sell that to a client where they can look at the price tag, and if you've got a line item, right, they can see acoustic treatment, and depending on the client, they could have a little bit of sticker shock, right? Power conditioning, not so much, but certainly on acoustics. How do you sell things like that is not a 100-inch TV, right? It's not ginormous speakers, but it's incredibly important to the overall experience.
It's not easy. From anyone that's been in this industry for long enough knows that you're right. It's one of those that you really have to give them the experience. They don't know until they know. And once they know, they get it. And whether that be taking them to a showroom or having one of your other customers that you've done a system for allow a new customer maybe experience it. It's really that, from what I found, that is the most effective way, is getting them to experience it. You don't know what a 1,000 horsepower car feels like and launching off the line until you sit in one. And then once you know, you're like, oh, then you compare everything to that. So until you have that experience, of what is perfect or close to perfect or is striving for perfection, then you're able to set that baseline. But explaining that to some customers just doesn't go anywhere because it's not of importance of them. We have customers that are very, very keen on audio and want the best quality they can get. But when it comes to video, they don't care about spending a dime. And we have customers that are the exact opposite. They want the best video, but when it comes to audio, they're just really not interested. And no matter how many times you explain it to them, it's not going to change their mind. But those that are a little open-minded, which are hopefully your preferred customers, you can get them to experience it and really, understand how much of an impact it can have when you can have music and movies give you an emotional feedback. So
Mark Vanco is the purveyor of one of my favorite speakers, Beale Street Audio. Vanco is not a sponsor in any way, shape, or form, but I remember the first time I experienced Beale Street, and that was at CEDIA a number of years ago, and that was a unique experience. How do you work with your dealers to sell that experience before they can experience, or to Ian's point, they have to experience that to get sold on whether that's power conditioning or a speaker that they are being introduced to?
Yeah, so the point of our speakers are obviously to have larger volume, clear capabilities, whether it's treble, bass, by the design of it, but that's great and all, unless you're not hooking it up well, right? I mean, we also manufacture a lot of wire, and the wire itself is extremely important, right? I mean, the article talks about the difference in the wire that they had to change out. And then, I mean, the biggest thing is the ohm conduction just coming from the panel itself. I think a lot of people don't understand. I'm going to use Monster Cable back in the day when they did their clean power, right? Like clean power was a thing because no one
gold
understood.
tip connectors.
No one understood that there was noise. There's noise in the line, and there's feedback, and there's issues in that. And this is just going into a much, much deeper scale of that. But, even magnetic, sound tubes within Pro MI cable there's reasonings to draw those electronic fields out of the cable and out of your system, because it can produce a lot to a person who, to Ian's point, has experienced it. They'll hear it and it'll bother them. And even if it's not $1 million system, right, it's still on a very large scale system. Once you hear what a true audiophile knows how to deal with and manage, it is absolutely incredible, and it will make your experience way better. I agree with you, Ian. I think a lot of people in this day and age with all these giant TVs and 8K, and trust me, we are loving it as well. I mean, it's a great industry, but the audio side, because there's never this gigantic inventions other than, maybe, wireless audio and so forth, I think it gets lost in how perfect you can make your system for audio. And it starts with your amplification, right? The correct power in that. It starts with the good wiring, and it starts with a good ground conduction. And if you're not getting any grounding within your system, you will hear multiple feedbacks. So I think it's a great article. I'd love to be able to say I knew all of this type of knowledge and was capable of being able to understand all of it. But it really is important. And it's really unique to see. I'd love to hear a system that large.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That would be incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll put a link to that article as well as the others on this episode's page. Thank you both so much. Ian Bryant from Premier SAV, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you?
Thanks. You can go to www.premiersav.com or ian.bryant@premiersav, and that's Premier, PREMIERE, SAV.com.
All right, very good. Mr. Corbin, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you or Vanco?
We just go to our website at vanco1, that's the number 1.com, or check us out on Twitter and Facebook at Vanco International. We will also be at CEDIA, so please check us out at CEDIA. Our booth will be 1532. You can't miss us. We've got a big one this year, and look forward to seeing you out there. Denver's going to be a fun spot.
All right, and Mr. Bryant, you will also be teaching at CEDIA, so what are you going to be talking about?
I'll be co-instructing one of the network labs. They are back this year, so we will be doing a couple of the hands-on networking labs. Come out and get a network or get a whole education pass and have fun. It's going to be great.
All right, very good. For me, for Tim Albright, don't follow me on the Twitters, but go by the website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You will find this program as well as a host of others. I mentioned this at the beginning. This isn't my usual gig. I usually host AV Week, which is the commercial side of what this is. But I am going to CEDIA, and CEDIA is September 7th through the 9th. Incredibly excited to go. CEDIA is one of my favorite shows, and especially excited this year because of the Commercial Integrator Expo that's going to be going alongside it. Our friend Dan Farisi and the other folks at Commercial Integrator, they're going to have the commercial side on the show floor in conjunction with CEDIA. So that'll be really, really fun. You'll find me. You'll find Dan Farisi. You'll find Chris Netto. And I'm still trying to get him to eat a pineapple pizza, but that's a whole other conversation. So you'll check me out. You can check us out the September 7th through the 9th at CEDIA in Denver, CEDIA Expo and CI Expo as well. So all that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. That's all the time we have for ResiWeek.